My wife and I are blessed. We have 7 children, and we love them all. They're all our favorites. Each child we have is our favorites. And Beth was extremely special.
She was kind, generous.
She had like a really sweet and caring personality.
She had this beautiful smile, like an inviting.
She could make friends with basically any stranger on the street and get a smile or a laugh out of them.
Beth was having a hard time sleeping for maybe 4, 5, or 6 weeks. And so we said, Beth, you should go to the doctor and get something to help you sleep.
He said, okay, well, I'll try to give you something to lessen your anxiety, and it should help you sleep.
Within 5 minutes, a 5-minute visit, he prescribed her Paxil.
When I first saw Beth right after she went on the Paxil, she was different. Like, I felt like she was drugged.
And by the 2nd or 3rd day, she's like, I don't know, I just don't feel right. You know, I feel strange in my skin.
But after about 3 or 4 days, I remember that Beth was, at times, very different, like sullen, keeping to herself.
My mom and her were having dinner, and she said she didn't have any real emotion. Like, she kind of felt emotionally numb.
She was like a different person. Like, she just seemed like she was under the influence of something. She didn't seem like herself. She seemed like she was tripping out.
I talked to her on the phone, and she told me she didn't want to be there. And I was like, why don't you want to be there? She's like, I just don't feel like myself. I just feel like crazy. I just don't feel right.
I truly believe that she was hallucinating maybe and going in and out of this psychotic state at this point.
It seemed like she was melting down, like emotionally. She was becoming worse every day.
I said, are you suicidal? I actually asked her. And she laughed at me. And she said, no, I would never do that.
And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm just gonna lay down next to her and I'll rub her head and I'll talk to her and we'll try to figure out what we're gonna do because something's not right here. And my son Matthew was right behind me going upstairs. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I saw her hanging in the hallway.
Then the police were all over the place and people were coming and going, and about 3 hours, 4 hours after my daughter died, one of my friends came over and said, you know, I was speaking to so-and-so, one of our other friends, and she said, oh, Beth must have been on Paxil. That's the only way she would kill herself.
It just wasn't her. Like, there was nothing in her that would have done that. She was the most non-violent, like gentle. It's a violent way to die.
It had to be the drug. There was no other answer.
If we knew what we knew now, Beth would be here with us today. I know that for a fact.
贝斯温特的故事只是众多悲剧中的一则。只要开立治疗精神异常的药物，这种故事就会重演。但是通常精神科医生坚持你相信他们的药是安全有效的，因为他们是心理健康专家，但你不是。可是一个接一个的个案证明了，如果相信他们，结果会很悲惨。
Psychiatry is pseudoscience. It's false science. It cannot withstand rigorous review if people would just look at the evidence.
If they help anyone, it's not worth the risk to the people that are harmed by them.
They are betraying every customer they have.
They don't know what they're doing, and we need to educate the public to use their feet and walk away.
民众如何变得更有知识呢？藉由行使一项重要的医疗权利，这项权利病人所知不多，但是精神科医师却非常熟悉。
We want to be able to present the patient with alternatives. And one of the central ideas in ethics is informed consent.
The components of informed consent are letting the person know, first of all, what the diagnosis is and what it's based on so that they can say, this is why we need to treat you. And secondly, what the treatment is.
Every patient in the healthcare system has a right to informed consent. That is, they have a right to be told the risks and benefits of the treatment, the risks and benefits of alternative treatments, and the risks and benefits of no treatment at all.
Patients should be totally informed, fully informed about every medication that the psychiatrist offers to them to take or says they should take.
研究证实，大众几乎没有被告知精神科药物的完整与正确资讯。 所以，关于精神科药物完整与正确的告知后同意权包含了些什么呢？这些医师和专家们在这方面有大量的经验。他们的首要观点：精神失调并不是真实的疾病，也不需要医疗介入。
It's true that there's no biological findings that really support any of these psychiatric diagnoses being medical illnesses. And the burden of proof really is the other way around. It's not that you have to prove that there is no biological science. The burden is on psychiatry to prove that there is.
There's no blood test. There's no lab test. There's no x-ray. These are just clusters of behavior that a group of psychiatrists have voted that it's a disease.
Can you imagine doctors having to have powwows to decide if a heart attack is a real disease or not? No, they don't have to decide that. They don't have to have a vote on that.
They should be asking the doc, geez doc, where's the chemical test for that? Where is the objective test for this? And I guarantee you that they'll be told, we don't have a chemical test for that.
There is no such thing as a chemical imbalance. And any psychiatrist that you talk to, if you ask him this question, they'll all admit it in private, but they won't admit it in public. It's a scandal.
So this is all subjective. Nothing objective about psychiatry.
第二，没有科学证据显示精神科药物能解决任何心理问题。
Since there is no measurement for these psychiatric diagnoses, because they're really just subjective, for the same reason there really can't be a measurement for the effects of the drug.
In terms of medication, the evidence that's claimed is the medications are highly effective and not very toxic. But actually, in fact, the data in psychiatry are very clear that that's not true. What is true is that the medications are barely, if at all, more effective than placebo.
You're selling drugs to people under false premises, under a disease that's been invented. So how do you measure efficacy among a disease that doesn't even exist?
第三，精神科药物蒙蔽了症状，还伴随了严重的短期和长期副作用。
Whatever problem you're being treated for, whether it's depression, real or otherwise, or cardiovascular disease, medicating away the symptoms is not solving the problem.
The patent medication gives the appearance of having helped because in the short term, it usually doesn't show the bad effects that are going to happen in the long term. So it's very deceptive.
The longer the patient's on the medication, the worse the prognosis is.
None of these medications hit precise targets. You begin accumulating all kinds of collateral damage. In other words, other organs in the body are actually harmed.
So for the first time, we're seeing kids in grade school or middle school who have type 2 diabetes and who have the beginning stages of cardiovascular disease.
So you see Parkinson's disease, you see tardive dyskinesias, you see other movement disorders.
Is it true that we're now seeing a lot of deaths from psychiatric drugs? Absolutely yes.
第四，精神科药物可能造成依赖与上瘾。
One of the hallmarks of informed consent with psychiatric meds is you have to discuss the potential for addiction.
The vast majority of psychiatric drugs create psychological and physical dependency.
Most patients that I've seen that were on these drugs have difficulty getting off of them. It's rare for somebody to just be able to stop it without a problem.
第五，大部分的心理问题是由潜在的生理疾病所引起的。
Many physical conditions can cause mental problems or what pose as psychiatric symptoms, but the psychiatrist, in the records I've reviewed, psychiatrist does not do an in-depth study of what could be causing the problem.
And if the doctor isn't taking the time to find the cause of those symptoms, then unfortunately, those symptoms may continue and there may be a serious underlying medical disorder that's being overlooked.
The question is it better to treat depression with a drug, or is it better to treat depression by trying to figure out what caused the depression and working it out with the patient.
Dehydration can make you exhibit symptoms of depression. Sleeplessness can make you exhibit symptoms of depression. Eating a terrible diet, hypoglycemia, being sedentary, all of these things are biological reasons for having symptoms of depression.
I have in my practice children who are misdiagnosed as having ADD, ADHD, who really have Lyme disease.
70% of all what are classified as mental illnesses actually have a physical cause, a physical problem causing that.
第六，无论情绪上或心理上的忧伤有多严重，还有很多有效的选择，而不需要用精神科药物。
Once you've proven that there is no problem in the body and that there is no malfunction in the brain, then you have to begin to address these other levels of the self. And I think that's what psychiatry has completely stopped doing.
There are very few conditions that cannot be treated by other methods than the use of drugs.
Any forces that impinge on medicine that make us think that the drug approach is the only approach is undermining good patient care.
由于不用药物的方法几乎很少告诉病人，所以病人实际上几乎没有告知后同意权。
When you get into informed consent, it's almost a responsibility of the patient to make an inquiry about the hazards of the drug and not rely on what the psychiatrist or physician tells them.
We can't go in and abdicate our responsibility as consumers simply because somebody has an MD after their name or someone is a psychiatrist and we think they know more than we do.
The best way to protect yourself is to educate yourself, is to ask questions not only of your doctor, but to do your own research.
Don't be ignorant, be informed. Get information from as many places as you can. That's how you'll be an intelligent, skeptical consumer, and that's how you will protect the safety of yourself, your children, and your entire family from this industry of death known as modern psychiatry.
现代精神病学在最近这50年来已经渗透了我们的世界，精神科药物也是。但是有方法可以揭露药物滥用的情形。请向贵国的药物管制主管机关报告精神科药物的所有不适症状和药物不良反应。MedWatch 是美国联邦的报告系统。
MedWatch is a voluntary reporting system, a passive reporting system where doctors, patients, healthcare providers, pharmacists, anybody really can make a report saying that they think that what they experienced or what their patient experienced was an adverse drug effect.
And this is what we call post-marketing surveillance. And this begins to get a look at what the side effects of long-term or chronic use of these drugs really is.
The FDA admits that probably only 1% of all the adverse drug effects are actually reported by patients or physicians.
唯有报告所有的药物不良反应，精神科药物滥用的可怕程度才会曝光。你知道真相，分享这部影片给你的医生，别让你自己、你的朋友和你所爱的人变成精神科药物这个巨大工业的下一个受害者。想要知道更多精神科和精神科用药的资料，或是报告精神科不当处置的案例，请联络公民人权委员会。